Hello, and welcome to this U.S. History podcast. In this podcast, we are going to be looking at the causes of the European Age of Exploration. So, we're going to look at how Europe went from being very insular or closed off from the world to developing the need and technology to sail across the globe. Okay, so let's get started. For hundreds of years, the Roman Empire united much of Europe, and when the Western Empire collapsed, its laws and social structures collapsed too. So during this time, there really was no powerful nation states in Europe to fill the vacuum that the Roman Empire left behind. With no central government after the fall of Rome, Western Europe largely consisted of small kingdoms instead of one large empire. And over time, these kingdoms would grow and become very powerful nation states. The period of time after the fall of the Roman Empire marked the beginning of the Middle Ages. This period of time is also referred to as the Dark Ages or medieval times, and it is important to note that this is really referring only to Europe. It was referred to as the Dark Ages because Europeans had, for the most part, they lost contact with the rest of the world and failed to advance themselves intellectually and academically. The rest of the world was scientifically and culturally more advanced than Europe was during this time. And they were certainly not in the Dark Ages. So this is a very European centered view. So during the Middle Ages, these nation states throughout Europe were constantly at war with one another. And as a result of this warfare, a new system of governance developed as a way of helping the leaders of these kingdoms hold on to their land and to protect their subjects. So, the defining feature of the Middle Ages is marked by the political, social, and economic system known as feudalism. The security and stability of these small kingdoms were achieved by maintaining a strict social hierarchy. So there were kings in these days, but the vast majority of people were peasants or serfs controlled by local nobility. And then you also had knights or vassals that would protect the kingdom. So during the Middle Ages, Europe made significant advancements in farming, and this led to a sharp population growth throughout Europe. And it was around this time of this population growth that Europeans started a series of military expeditions known as the Crusades. These military expeditions were led by Europeans seeking to capture Jerusalem and the Holy Land from the Islamic leaders who controlled these lands. So, although the Crusades were largely unsuccessful for Europe, they did bring Europeans into contact with the Middle East and different cultures, and they were then exposed to Middle Eastern goods. They also led to increased shipbuilding and trade among these different parts of the world. So, the Crusades allowed Europeans to establish trade centers with parts of the world they previously had no contact with. Traders started expanding their reach in search of these popular goods and bringing wealth to what were now becoming powerful European nation states. So, towns and cities started to develop around these new trade centers, and feudalism started to weaken as people started to abandon their old manor lives for new and better job opportunities in these newly developed towns. They were able to do this because many of the knights who would keep the peasants on the farm normally had died during the Crusades. So the end of the Middle Ages and feudalism would become complete with the outbreak of a devastating disease called the bubonic plague, or the plague for short. It's also known as the Black Death. And this would kill 50 million people worldwide, including one third of Europeans. The death of so many Europeans meant that there was a severe labor shortage. So, laborers that survived the outbreak found better work prospects in cities, and they could demand higher wages than they normally would have before. So, the plague and this movement to towns ended feudalism and the Middle Ages. As for the photos here, so the doctors in the 14th century believed that the plague was spread by bad odors. So a French physician created this costume right here to protect against such bad odors and therefore supposedly the plague. But of course, we know today that bad odors was not the cause of the plague. It was actually transmitted through fleas, which would be transported on rats. So around the 14th century, a period known as the Renaissance took hold of Europe as advances in the sciences and arts spread knowledge throughout the region. One important development was the creation of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg. Before the printing press could mass produce books, people had to memorize books and write them down by hand if they wanted to create a book. So this is a major invention that set off what is called the Gutenberg Revolution. This invention helped to make literature widespread throughout Europe, and more people are going to have access to learning how to read and to have access to information that they previously did not have before. So the printing press would also help spread information about shipping and trade as people began to learn about worlds that were outside of their own little corners of the globe for the first time. And this is what the printing press looked like. And this area right here, you would print the book onto the pages, one page at a time. So it's still a very slow process, but a lot faster than writing it by hand. And the first book created by this printing press was the Bible, which would come to be known as the Gutenberg Bible. And that makes sense if you remember from seventh grade history, the influence that the church had on people's lives back during this time. So of the Gutenberg Bible, there are 49 surviving copies of that Bible today in the world. And the one right here is located in the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. So in addition to the printing press, there were also a lot of technological advances in navigation. So we would start to see inventions like the astrolabe, the compass, improved maps that would allow for sea travel in the open ocean away from the side of land. So these inventions would help improve navigation. You also had new, faster, ocean-worthy ships, such as the Caravel, that were developed. They were sturdier and large enough to carry more supplies, making long voyages on the open sea a lot more feasible. One of the major causes for the age of exploration and why Europeans started sailing around the world was that there were a lot of political changes in Asia that denied Europeans access to the Silk Road. So traders, European traders that is, needed to make a profit. And at this time, the most sought after luxury goods, such as spices and silk, were only available in far off Asian lands, which at the time required long overland journeys like these along the Silk Road. Or through Egypt, which connected the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea. So in the mid 15th century, the Turks of the Ottoman Empire captured the city of Constantinople right here. And capturing the city gave the Turks complete control of the Silk Road because Constantinople joined the two continents together. And this control allowed the Turks to charge Europeans high prices for Asian goods. So Turkish merchants could then make a large profit on the goods. So without access to the Silk Road, Europeans explored new sea routes to Asia. So Portugal would take the early lead, backed by one of their rulers, Prince Henry the Navigator. He created a navigation school where students would study geography, mathematics, astronomy, and cartography or map making, and all of these things you would need for navigation. He also financed early sea expeditions along the coast of Africa, and it was with these voyages that the age of exploration had begun. So remember, that was Portugal had led early sea exploration. A lot of students think that it's Spain. That is a commonly missed question on the test. So it is Portugal, not Spain. So the Portuguese had explored the coast of Africa starting in the early 1400s, and it wasn't until the end of the 15th century that Portuguese navigator Vasco da Gama would be able to sail to India via one of these routes. Da Gama followed a route that was earlier discovered by Bartolomeo Diaz and would eventually sail around the Cape of Good Hope at the southern tip of Africa. And he provided a sea route to those sought after Asian ports. So da Gama was able to return to Portugal with Indian spices, and this journey helped reestablish direct trade between Europe and the East. So there you have it, the causes of the Age of Exploration. So we looked at the different causes that led to Europeans setting sail and exploring the world and discovering lands that were new to them. And this is after centuries of being closed off to the rest of the world. And as we can see, there were a number of different causes that took place over the course of centuries that eventually led to European exploration. So, in future podcasts, we are going to discuss the various voyages of European explorers and the long term and everlasting effects that this had across continents. So, if you have any questions, write them down and be prepared to ask those in class. I hope this podcast helped. Have a good day.